Yeah, I just got a book. It's called, it's like Breaking the Habit of Being You, something like that. It's by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I'm anxious to get into that because the sciences and all these people are starting to look at, oh, what is it that causes this me? And so they're looking at it from a different angle. So it's kind of curious. Um,
Well, certainly our society believes we're these individual people.
I act like I believe it.
yeah, it's been long time of programming. Deprogramming takes some work.
Well, everything around you, you know, is set up as if we're all individual people. You know, I mean, everything you talk to, everything you read, you mean it's.
Well, thought is built, set up like that, right? Thought itself.
You think they're your thoughts, but maybe they're not.
I was reading Ramakant's book, Self of Self, and I came across a passage where he says, concentrate on the concentrator. So I sort of took that to heart and tried sort of looking at it that way. And it seemed to remind me of very similar to the who am I type of concentration, and what it made me it brought me more directly into contact sort of with what where my thoughts are coming from, and it seemed to be a helpful I know that just doing doing the mantra like in itself and in the background, that just doing that undercuts thoughts or put something in their place, kind of. But using the idea of concentrating on the concentrator seemed to add a little bit of a dimension to it. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that. Like, is there a better or a most effective way of doing the mantra, or I don't know, just simply do it is good enough. But
well, the main thing is the mantra invites the attention of the invisible listener, and that's the key. The concentration on the concentrator is merely the sense of presence, and instead of going outward, you go inward. And there is no outward and inward in reality, but as long as you're considering yourself with a local identification that I'm in this body and I'm going outward and inward, then you remain with that sense of presence. That's that sense of presence. That formlessness is that's the key. I think Nisargadatta Maharaj says that's like the doorway, basically, that takes you to reality and away from illusion. And every time you just walk through that doorway into reality and away from illusion. Because reality is you're completely and totally formless. It's like you're like space, more subtle than space, but if at all you want to compare yourself to space or sky. And then how do you think? What do you think about? The objects that are in the space is not concerned if they're fighting or if they're happy or if they're sad or any of these things. And you're more subtle than the space because the space is arising in your spontaneous presence. So when you know yourself in a real sense, that conviction, it just clicks. Okay, I'm formless. The sense of presence is the reminder of the formless nature of my reality. And I am ultimate truth because I'm not a body. So any thoughts about a body are discarded automatically. Any thoughts about what's going on in the world are discarded automatically because that's not myself. I can be in the world as long as I'm believing I'm in a body and this and that, and I can move around, but the body's an instrument. It's touched very lightly. There's no longer a worries and you start to see too, and when you put this in action, you will begin to project this reality and you'll have a two-way communication with yourself. That's why Maharaj says you have to have courage. The fear is, okay, I know this, but I don't want to go all the way. I don't want to step outside of myself because what if it's not true? Or what if, it takes time? Or what if I lose my job while I'm stepping through or whatever? But see, all of these things are illusory. None of that's going to happen. But you, the selfless self, when you take one step, the master takes the next step and the next step. You have to put it into practice. Right now, when this whole little TV thing goes off, immediately just put it into practice. I'm the formless reality. That's it. And when something happens, oh, no. I'm the formless reality. If a car pulls out in front of me and gives me a hard time or whatever, but the space doesn't know that there's a hard time going on inside of it, nor does it really care. And I just said, immediately, you just say, okay, formless presence, formless reality. This is a form thing, not needed. I do what I need to do in the moment and I leave it, just like drinking the glass of water or like Maharaj says, the tea. It's just, boom, right here, take the touch and out, take the touch and out. Very, very light. You're formless. You're not a body. You never were a body. You're not going to be a body. And all these body-related things, there was a video that just came, I posted today about the real master. And in it, Maharaj says, like, you take the touch and suddenly when you believe you're a body, then mind, ego, intellect is giving you all this information about the body that you are not. And you can easily take your attention and just focus it on the space. And yet the objects in the space is not affected by the objects in the space. Space isn't thinking. You can talk about the political scene and how everybody's all riled up, but is the space in the room where everybody's riled up, is that being affected? Is the space affected by any political thing? Is the space affected by rain or wind or anything? No. And that's yourself. You're more subtle than space. You've got to stop, you could say, I believe I'm not a body, except when this thing happens and all these kind of things, but you're not a body. And as soon as you start to show yourself and impress the reality instead of losing the illusory world, you will begin to absolutely see, because the entire world is projected on your spontaneous presence. And this reaction and interaction with your own selfless self will become natural. But the action has to be taken the next moment. If the doorway opens and master says, a door opens and like you see in like Twilight Zone or something, there's nothing there. And the door is open and master says, go ahead, step through. Everything is going to be okay. You're like, well, there's like nothing there, so I don't know. But no, you just, okay, walk through. It literally has to be like this. Otherwise, you're going to pretend to be this limited body form forever. And more concepts are going to be added on. And, it's the more concepts that are added on, the more difficult it is to know yourself in a real sense, because every concept that you add on births a whole bunch of little grandchildren concepts that are also believed in. But prior to being this, you didn't have any concepts. After leaving the body, you'll have no concepts. Whatever was there, something this something that we're seeing here appeared in the nothing. And yet it had to be nothing there as the background for this something. So to say I am, there had to be something that clicked with the body that said I am, that will also then not be with the body, but will still be there. You just have to know this. That's your selfless self. There's no worries, no concerns, no mind, because what's mind going to do? After a while, you're going to laugh because it's like, okay, this mind is telling me that I have to do this and this and this and this. And it's all form stuff. So what does that mean? You know, and like Maharaj says, in a split instant, you go to sleep and a dream world is projected and you see yourself inside the dream. And just from that split second of existence, the spontaneous projection is projected. And it's the same when you're waking up in that split second. Oh, boom, a waking world is projected. But you're not in it. It's like, you know, if this body was selfless self, all of the world is occurring inside of here. And yet selfless self doesn't have the limitations of a body. So the entire world is appearing, and selfless self is appearing in all these different various forms inside of itself and seeing that, oh, I'm in this illusory world. But once you know it's the illusory world and that all this is not really happening, nothing's going on, nothing's happening, nothing. Like Maharaj says, spirit clicked with the body and you say I. So now you say, oh, I is this body, because this sense of existence, I believe myself to be a body. But once you know that this sense of existence is a formless sense of existence and has no need for body, that prior to body, the formless sense of existence was there. There was just nothing to notice or witness in the existence, just the existence. Then what's the point? Okay, I have to know myself in a real sense. And it's just everything is pointing and pulling you towards your selfless self because you are that.
The trick is for that to become more obvious.
Well, it's not become, it is. It's reality. Every thought that you have is not reality. The reality is that is the reality. I don't have to think that reality is. Reality is whether I think so or not, obviously, because I can pretend to be a limited form in the illusory world and still carry on my activities quite nicely and yet completely know that it's all occurring inside my selfless self.
But
Doesn't matter.
For me to be aware of that is tricky, though.
No, but you don't have to be aware. Master says, listen, this is the reality. Now behave in the reality, and while you're behaving in the reality, it'll raise the awareness. You'll be impressing the invisible listener with the fact that I trust the master, which is my own selfless self, that's telling me that it's all illusion. And I'm putting forth the next action to show that I trust my selfless self. I have complete faith and trust in the master, and complete trust and faith in my selfless self. There's no questions, there's no doubts, there's no nothing, because it's just, it is. So that's the reality. And when you say like, oh, well, how does that affect your life and all this? Well, it doesn't affect your life because number one, you're not actually living this life. This life is being lived. And number two, you can still do your thing. Like it talks about being a householder. You can be a householder and yet know your selfless self. You don't give yourself away to these other these activities out here. Yet you can still be a father or an uncle or a husband, but it's not affecting because you know in the deepest sense that all of this is just a role that I'm playing for a time. And when the play is over, the role is finished. And I can be acting and loving and all this kind of stuff, but the role is finished. It's finished. And I know that it never was. So there's no like pressure of, oh my God, what if I do this wrong? Do what wrong? There's nothing being done. You're not a doer.
Trish,
Mhm.
I think there's noise coming from your station there. Is there something you could do to like put some headphones on or something?
From my standpoint, well, I can mute it. I don't know how to mute. It was muted before, and I don't know.
Just press the little button on the side. Yeah.
Now we can't hear you, but okay.
Yeah.
We can sign to you.
Yeah.
Selfless self. No thinking.
Reality.
Yeah, you don't need to think about the reality, because as soon as you think about the reality, you've separated yourself from the reality by creating a thinker thinking about the reality.
So you're just the observer of whatever's unfolding without being the doer.
Well, you're not even really the observer, because you're there. Just like I think Nisargadatta Maharaj says, when the sunset comes up, you're observing the sunset, but you're not really actively doing anything. The sunset is there. So just in the same way, these scenes are appearing. They're coming and going. You're not really observing, because you don't have a point of interest to say, oh, this is how this sunset relates to me, or how this cold relates to me. There's no relation, because everything's just scenes without a you in it. And every time there happens to be a you that's in it, you remind yourself that you're the space in which you're observing all these things. And you do that through mantra. Remain with your selfless self. You will see, as you continue to discard everything in the world and keep with your selfless self, like Nisargadatta Maharaj says, he says, remain with the I am, and it will reveal it will tell you all the secrets. And you just stay with the sense of presence. That's it. And the sense of presence should be stronger through mantra, because you're erasing the thoughts that are kind of covering under veils and illusory layers on your presence. So mantra allows you to erase these little coverings of your presence, so you can feel your presence a little more strongly, so that then you can continue to remain with your selfless self and not with the outside world. And then eventually, as you're remaining with your sense of presence, you become one with your selfless self, and the sense of presence will go. And yet oh, the formless awareness is there, and then there's nothing, because you're one with it. You see, anything that you're sensing or doing, you're not one with. But this sense of presence is arising because of this body form, this sense of otherness. Something is detected. I exist, the world happens. But I exist is just I, just I. I is everything, and I is nothing. And you remain on that edge between knowing and not knowing. There's like a precipice of knowing and not knowing, but because there's no knower being created, the knowingness is known in the moment when needed, and then dropped when not. Like something arises and falls, and rises and falls, and yet there's no movement, because it's just like, okay, and something is needed in the moment, but the background is always still. But these things are arising. Okay, something's needed in the moment, and now it's not. Background of stillness and silence. Background arising. Same kind of thing. Scenes are coming and going, but you're on this, you're that, again, that razor's edge of reality where it's too thin for a you. There's no space for you in the razor's edge of reality. You're just walking this razor's edge of reality without a you, without a knowing, but without a no knowing. There's no ignorance, because there's no knowledge. There's just nothing. You're just And scenes are coming, and whatever's needed in the moment is participated in, and the scene disappears, and you're still here. And the next scene, and the next scene, and the next scene. And no thoughts, because as long as you're in the razor's edge of reality, you're not thinking about being on the razor's edge of reality, because there's nothing to know and nothing not to know. And there's no knowledge and no knowledge. It's just nothing.
I guess when the body dies, there's really nothing because the projection machine is gone.
Well, body doesn't really die. It just kind of deteriorates or decomposes. You know what I mean? There's not, like, it's not, it's just a conglomeration of the five elements that will start to decompose or start to kind of fade or deteriorate, basically.
Right. Goes back into the whatever the earth is made of.
Yeah, and back in from which it came. It's either burned or buried, and that's it. Like we talked about the banana. There's no difference between the banana that's rotting on the counter and your own body. Your own body is rotting over time, you know, deteriorating over time, but it's the same. And as soon as the vital breath goes back into the air and the consciousness or whatever you want to call it is just like, it's always here. So there's just this body falls and there's no longer an attention paid to this body because there's nothing that's a central point. It's just like, okay, it's finished. But whatever, and that's when you know yourself in a real sense, it's just breathe in, breathe out, and it's finished. But you know, see, you have to know that nothing was there. You played a role for a while and the show got canceled and that's it.
But there's still awareness because awareness doesn't die.
There's not, well, there's not, it's not awareness because you can't really call it awareness because awareness has to be aware of something to be aware. Just like awareness is aware of consciousness and all the objects in consciousness, awareness is aware of these things. But once there's nothing to be aware of, there's nothing other. It's just one continuum. What is there to be aware of? Nothing. And there's no anything that's other than, unless it's in the consciousness. Spirit clicks with the body and you say I, and I is this body, and you play for a little while, and then you're not this body because you recognize the fact that, oh, the just I, the sense of presence, I'm feeling, I exist, but I don't exist in body form. I know myself in a real sense as basically like sky or space.
Well, then it's sort of like the deep sleep where there's nothing to be aware of. There's something there, but there's no object. So that's what deep sleep is, right?
It's deep sleep is the kind of dreamless sleep without a sense of body form or without a sense of otherness or I. The awareness that you're speaking about, again, awareness has to be aware of something. And it's like consciousness appears and all this whole world and all this everything is kind of appearing to awareness or on awareness, on your spontaneous presence. Again, the same way, the best way to describe it is the dream state. When you lay down and then boom, dream world and everything's in it. Same kind of thing when there's a sense of existence, boom, dream world is created. Or waking state, dream world, whatever you want to call it, because it's all in the consciousness. And you're not the consciousness because this consciousness appears to you. What you're speaking about is when the spirit kind of clicked with the body and was, oh, I exist. Again, prior to beingness, something became beingness, or beingness arose on something, and beingness arose on the prior to beingness on your spontaneous presence. But in like intellectually trying to figure out about awareness will still be aware of itself, but it's not, because there's nothing, like you're everything. So you can't, there's nothing, there's no objects except for in consciousness using a body form. So you're not having any awareness of anything because it's all, there's nothing other than yourself. In order to know yourself, you'd have to know yourself through the concept of otherness, which is now.
But in language terms, would you say you're aware in the same way now as after death? Or?
Well, again, there's no death, because you look at it and you say, okay, body deteriorates. And your presence is formless, so there's no, see, death, the concept of death just doesn't even make sense to your formless nature. There's no way a form can formless something can die or can be cut or can be burned or can cease to be there.
Well, you're aware that formless nature is here now, as it will be and always is, or something.
But there be no something appearing on the spontaneous presence. There's no appearances in consciousness. There won't be anything arising. It's a continuum.
But you know that now.
You know that now that that's why Maharaj says it's very important to know yourself in a real sense. Because spirit clicked with the body and you say, I exist. You believe you exist as this body form, and other body forms tell you you exist as this body form, so it impresses this reality of I'm in a body. And now I have this mind, ego, intellect that's willing to kind of give me scripts about everything. And I start to feel the world and walk around thinking and believing I'm a body. But the just I, you know yourself in a real sense as the formless sense of presence. And when you continue to remain with yourself and don't pay attention to all the illusory passing things, and eventually, you go to a master and the master says, yes, this sense of presence is your own selfless self. And that's it. Okay. And you get a mantra so that you can erase all the illusory layers so that you can sense that presence is your own self. Okay, I become one with this sense of presence. And once I become one with the sense of presence, then even the presence isn't there. It's just a knowingness that, okay, the just I, this formless awareness is my own self. So everything that's happening is absolutely illusion. All the traffic that's going through this mind, ego, intellect is absolutely illusion, because only mind can produce thoughts in form, and you're formless. So all these form-based thoughts are in the form-based reality because mind came along with the body, which came along with the form-based reality. But that's not the reality. That's not the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is prior to beingness, prior to knowing yourself. When you had nothing to know because there was nothing to know, there was no knowledge, no ignorance, no nothing. Like happiness, sadness, all these things only occurred when the spirit clicked with the body and you started kind of playing in this form type world. And then this mind started to interpret the form world. I'm sad, I'm this. The body has changes from the five elemental body, like we talked about, cloudy day, sunny day. In the body, there's cloudy day, sunny day, and mind sits there and says, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I don't like to be depressed. Maybe I should go outside and go for a walk in the sun or whatever. All these sort of things, because your belief is that you're a body, but you're not a body. And once you know that you're not a body, then all of this opens up. The spontaneous conviction is this, just die, just die. That's the selfless self. If you want to go with Nisargadatta Maharaj, he always says the I am. The I am is presence. That presence is I am. Stay with the presence. Presence will introduce you to all sorts of, it'll boil your mind. I think we talked about like Alka-Seltzer in a glass of water.
Well, when I was doing that, concentrating on the concentrator, or when I was sort of using that, it kind of as on that same page, Ramakant said that the concentrating on the concentrator will make the concentrator disappear.
Yes.
And I was getting a sense of that, and I was noticing that I was going into a space where I couldn't tell what it was. It was like I was in everything, or everything. There was no distinction anymore. I was getting, sometimes I get that it comes in strong and it stays for a while, but I was getting it in like small glimpses while I was doing this practices.
There you go.
It was like a loving presence or something.
You don't even have to label it or try to define it. It's just selfless self is shaking Keith off like a dog when it gets out of the bathtub, and it basically what you're describing is selfless self is shaking Keith off. Keith is an illusory layer on your spontaneous presence, and you're shaking that off. You're starting to know, I don't need this Keith. This body that's labeled Keith is not myself, and this is not me. This is not myself. Then what am I? Well, I am this formless sense of presence, the existence that exists formlessly. That all this Keith and Keith's life and his mom and all the people and everybody around him, they're appearing on that spontaneous presence. Your presence is the background to every experience. So it's always there.
What I was noticing, I guess, was that the concentrator is always there, but I normally interpret it as being a me. Whereas in the case of seeing that the concentrator is always there, it's not me. It's like everywhere all the time.
And that's Maharaj says, God, Brahman, Paramatman, Master are labels given to that spontaneous presence that you are. So Keith is another label given to that spontaneous presence that you are that's being shaken off. And eventually there's no labeling because there's no local identification. That concentration on the concentrator erases the concentrator because I am sitting concentrating. But that I that's sitting and concentrating is being erased by the concentration, but without labeling it.
It seemed to be more simple than I could imagine. It was it's like too easy. It's like, why don't I recognize this all the time? It's like,
because of that thought. Because that thought I'm recognizing this.
Yeah, I compare not recognizing it to recognizing it.
Exactly, but just be with your selfless self. There's no need to create labels or to say, oh, that's the most terrible thing actually, is when the sense of presence is so strong and you're just like totally no mind and everything, and the scenes are starting to happen and you're actually sensing your reality. And then your mind says, wow, this must be what reality is like.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden, then there's an I am somebody else, and it sneaks in the back door.
Yeah, you don't even notice how it drags you in.
Exactly. It sneaks in the back door. I think Maharaj talks about the mind pricks you from the backside. And that's what it is. It's like you're with yourself, the self, you just die. And just like in the morning when you wake up, okay, there's no you, there's no world, there's no thoughts, there's no nothing, just this kind of fuzzy, nice feeling, just die. And then an I am somebody else starts to churn, and all these things start to happen. And in what you're saying, you're sitting there and you're meditating, and even you're meditating with your eyes open. You might be walking down the street and you're like, wow, you know, I'm not feeling my body. There's no pressures of body knowledge. There's no mind. And then that thought is coming. There's an observer that's starting to speak and creating a something. That's why Maharaj says, I am Brahman, but you don't even have to say it. So that I, and you don't have to say it. There's no need, because as soon as you create a need, then there's someone in the illusion that believes they've had the reality. I think Siddharameshwara Maharaj says, if Mr. So-and-so now believes that he's gotten rid of Mr. So-and-so and is Brahman, then Mr. So-and-so is still lost in the illusion, delusionally thinking that he is Brahman. No, there is Brahman, and there never was a Mr. So-and-so. And Brahman is now having the recognition through erasing this Mr. So-and-so that was an extra illusory layer that never was. But Mr. So-and-so can't say, oh, I got it. I'm Brahman. No.
But I always have to think there's more to it or something.
Yeah, but and it's literally, it's so simple of just the mantra erases the concepts, the illusory layers on your presence, so that your presence, you can remain with yourself as self and not give yourself away. And then when things happen and you start to fall into the illusion a little bit, mantra. That's why Maharaj says you stay alert. Bhajans, listening to Master on the tapes and or the, what do you call it, the YouTube videos and such, you know, going to ramakantmaharaj.us and re-listening to those things, reading Selfless Self, reading Ultimate Truth, because you're impressing the reality. So that when the illusion starts to shake over here, no, I'm with the reality. Thank you very much. And yet I can still sit in a business meeting at work, and I don't sit there and I say, you know what? I am the formless reality, and all this is occurring inside myself. So no, you can't do that. You're just, here you are. Because even that is then pride of the illusory spiritual knowledge. And the truth is, all those forms inside that room that you're trying to show pride to are your own selfless self. You okay, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm struggling with a little flu. That's all.
Oh, wow.
Really? Flu? Okay.
Are you in Louisiana or at home?
I'm home. Yeah,
Oh,
here
okay.
in Sedona. Yeah, we had 18 inches of snow this year. So anyway.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah,
my
just
God.
This past weekend, it was really amazing. So anyway, yeah.
Isn't Sedona like in the desert, basically?
High desert. It's called the high desert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Even Scottsdale had snow this weekend.
But 18 inches is a lot or normal for you guys?
It's very, very rare.
Okay.
I've never seen it this high before, so it was really something.
Wow.
So.
If you're starting to come, you're just starting to come down with something?
No, it's been going on for a few days now. You know, and so it's kind of like beginning to taper off, I think. You know, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Every day is a new adventure.
Indeed.
I always recommend that Zycam nasal things or else zinc, but you got to follow the directions and do it 2 days after you have to continue 2 days after the
Symptoms begin, right?
after the symptoms are gone.
Okay.
Otherwise it can come back on you. Yeah, I was just reading this one guy. He called it intense, a tense alert, passive, how do you say it? Intense alertness with passive alertness at the same time or something.
Well, see, once you develop the discrimination between the form and the formless, and you truly understand this, like, you just know. Like, I guess Maharaj calls it the spontaneous conviction. Your spontaneous conviction is, I am absolutely formless, and this form world has nothing to do with me. Then the discrimination will be very, very quick and easy. Like, you start to get irritated about something and then be like I said, even you know, how the political scene is or something's happening, the space in the room where those things are occurring is not affected positively or negatively by anything going on in the space. And which one of the forms inside the space would be the one that you would say, oh, that one's me and I'm on his side? How? There is nothing like this.
Do you still vote?
Do I still vote? Yeah, I do.
So you vote.
Go ahead.
That's in the relative way of distinguishing. You know, it's still life goes on, I guess.
Well, see, you don't have to keep reminding yourself, just like Maharaj says, I don't have to keep reminding myself, I'm John Richards, I'm John Richards, I'm John Richards. Just like I don't have to keep reminding myself, I'm selfless self. You know, I'm the formless reality. And all of this is actually not anything. But for the time, I'm doing what needs to be done. But when mind starts to come in and impress me with, you're not doing enough, or this is happening, these things don't occur because who is this mind who are you presenting these thoughts to? And these thoughts are about something that has no effect, that I'm totally, completely separate and apart from. The day-to-day activities, they're not bothered. And you don't go around telling people, yes, you know, and yet you're just, nothing changes, really. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the reality now. Like, there's only the idea that this that is false is real, and that's why the false is looking real right now. But the reality is always the reality. It's not changing. So it's not like,
it's not a matter of whether it's false or real.
Yeah, I mean, there are false concepts that are layers upon your spontaneous presence that are keeping you kind of in time, in a form, and all this through belief, but it's not true. And that's why when Master says, no, you understand, you're not a body, you were not a body, you're not going to remain the body, body's not your identity. Okay, then who am I? Well, you know yourself in a real sense. How do you know yourself in a real sense? Through the meditation, through mantra, through impressing the bhajans that erase all these illusory layers and keep you with your selfless self. And then you go about whatever you do, it really doesn't even matter. I mean, don't go out and do stupid, crazy stuff because like the egoic sense says, oh, well, that means that I don't care. No. This is your time. Like, you know what I'm saying? While you're in body form, use it to know yourself in a real sense. The other things are going to come and go as they do, but know yourself in a real sense. And knowing yourself in a real sense doesn't change like, oh, now I have to be super kind or something like all these things spontaneously occur. Like Maharaj says, those symptoms of realization, those aren't symptoms of realization that you have to practice. Those come because who are you fighting? What is there to struggle? When sadness, you feel sadness in the body or whatever, there isn't a mind that sits there and does a Google search on why you're sad, or tells you that this sadness is never going to go away. Okay, there's a disturbance in the five elemental body, and just like there's sunshine, there's clouds. Clouds are coming and going, but I'm not concerned with this. Body feels sick. Okay, body feels sick. So go and get some medication or go to the doctor, and doctor says, take this medication. Okay, and I don't have to sit there and say, okay, I'm the space, and the doctor and myself are inside that space. So no, it's just a normal, natural thing. You don't have to keep impressing on yourself. Know yourself as the sense of presence. When you start to feel yourself get lost in the illusory world, remain with your selfless self. And mantra allows whatever these illusory concepts that are bothering your beingness, erase slowly, silently, and permanently. And like Maharaj says, prior to beingness, did you have this concern that you may have in this moment? No. Okay. So then don't be concerned about it. Do what needs to be done and finish it. That's it. Do whatever you like, but know deep down, I'm this formless reality. All of this is appearing on my spontaneous presence. Behind everything, my spontaneous presence is there. It's like a dream. When you're dreaming at night, you don't freak out if, like, you know, you get a flat tire in a dream. You don't like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't afford to get a flat tire. Da, da, da. No, right? It's like, you know, it's a dream. You wake up and say, oh, it was a dream. I had a flat tire. Same thing here. Nothing to get super concerned about because this is all just a long dream. Whatever is needed in the moment, see, this is the key. Step forward. Continue to step forward. It's the reality. And as you're impressing the reality, then your selfless self, you the selfless self, are no longer caught up in this illusory concept. All these different illusory thoughts, you're no longer caught up in it. And the spontaneous projection, the world is a projection on your spontaneous presence, and everything will just, you'll just see, you'll start to interact with your own self in all these different various forms without having to remind yourself that that's what you're doing. I think Maharaj talks about those symptoms of realization. They just spontaneously occur. You'll be amazed at how you're just interacting and acting and this and that, because there's not an egoistic sense of self that's wanting to wrest some kind of something from this world. You're no longer struggling and fighting and striving and I want this and I want that, and you have this and I want it, so I have to do something against you because I want what you have. Or why do you have more than I have? All that is nonsense because you're not there. And in the spontaneous presence, in that sense of presence, again, it's like fluffy clouds. Which fluffy cloud is worth fighting for? None, nothing. Because see, if you give yourself away to a fluffy cloud, then your mind is going to create gold out of sand. It's just sand, but your mind is going to say, no, 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 no. This is gold. I want it. I want it. But it's nothing. So just be happy, be normal, be simple, be humble, be quiet, be always with you, like Maharaj says. And if you do get upset, notice it, discard it, mantra, remain with yourself.
have to admit I have strong attachment to ideas. But there's a cure.
Yeah, just remove the little kind of sticking point where ideas can stick to, and that's the I am somebody else. And then ideas can be there, they can come and go, it doesn't matter as long as they don't have a place to land. And if they do have a place to land, then you have mantra and remaining with yourself the self. And this is the reality. It's the reality. Like it's really the reality. Like, there's no like, is it the reality? No, this is the reality. Yes. You were formless. I think Maharaj says you were formless before the body form. You were formless while you were with the body form, and you'll be formless after you're without the body form. And you're formless in this very moment. All the ideas and beliefs are because you believe yourself to be a form, and you're the formless reality that is believing and kind of experiencing through this concept of form. The invisible, anonymous, unidentified identity. I'm telling you, I would highly recommend going to the ramakantmaharaj.us. The video that was put up today, it's from Alex. He has a whole bunch of videos, but I just captioned it. But it's really, really good. It's labeled The Real Master. And Maharaj just goes through step by step by step, constructing this idea of being a body in a world.
Okay. It's easy to find on there?
Yeah. ramakantmaharaj.us. And it's you scroll down a little bit, and it's the very first video where it says recent videos. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it'll say February, whatever today is, 2019. I would highly recommend the video. And I would highly recommend clicking on the site randomly and asking a question or putting in something about anything and then listening to the video that comes up. Because again, it's the formless reality. So you're always interacting with your own selfless self, and all these experiences and all these things are appearing on your presence. So if you take the initiative and go and start to type, it's your own selfless self that's guiding this conceptual mind belief into the reality.
Well, I do that all the time with Google. I put non-duality in Google, and then whatever my concern of the moment is, and articles come up that, and sometimes, it just seems to click. But
Good, yeah. Just make sure, like Maharaj says, and that's why this thing says, the real master is one who knows himself perfectly, has no conceptual beliefs or ideas whatsoever, knows the secret of his worth, and can show you the secret of your own reality. And like he says in the video, there's a lot of commercial and a lot of body knowledge, body-based saints, I guess is what he calls it, that are impressing their concepts on you of how the reality is. But in speaking, they're automatically separating, this is the reality and this is your own self and this is how you kind of go to the reality. But the reality in the lineage, the reality is the base. And all these things that are appearing are just dissolving because your base is reality. That's you. Just I, oh, so that I. That you are, that sense of presence. All these different illusory things are being dissolved, but you're remaining and trying to perceive yourself. All these are not myself, this I am. You see, and the lot will then say, let's go from here and turn it around and try to get to the reality. And Maharaj says, no, you're the ultimate truth and ultimate reality. These things are appearing, and these are the conceptual layers that are appearing on your presence. Not the other way around, where I, John, am trying to invite an attention of an invisible listener that erases John, but I'm going the other way. I'm inviting, and then the presence grows for John to dive into the presence. No, the presence is the reality. John is the illusory layer that we're dissolving. That's a little subtle difference. Like Maharaj talks about the Ganesh. It's like just this little mistake. You believe you're a body, just this little mistake. And that's why he pinches his hand or whatever, does that Ganesh gesture. And that's the little mistake. Not to see yourself as a body trying to face the reality, but the reality, who knows, this is the truth, and these are the illusory layers that need to be dissolved so that I can remain with myself and not be carried away by illusory layers. And there's no practice of anything other than to know this is my position and these things are appearing on my spontaneous presence. And I've been given the magic eraser or the antivirus software to get rid of all these concepts that are appearing on my spontaneous presence.
So it's the reality seeking itself, and not
Correct.
the other way around. You know, like
Correct.
somebody seeking the reality. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, because there isn't a somebody.
No,
There's only the reality playing a game with itself.
exactly. Well, just like Andrew's sickness, if it had sentience of its own self and it said, oh, we don't like being with Andrew. But Andrew is the one that gets rid of the sickness, not the sickness that gets rid of Andrew.
Mhm.
Hopefully, sickness will not get rid of Andrew.
Well, yeah, you know what, I'm not trying to be like,
Let's hope so.
but it's like the spontaneous existence, the reality, the formless presence, all these things are appearing. And once you know yourself in a real sense, then they can appear, they can dance, they can play. It's not yourself, you're totally uninvolved with it. So it's okay. Like the space, whatever's happening inside the room, the space is not concerned. It's like just nothing. There's the something is stirring in the nothing. And we talked about like the boil on the butt of selfless self. John is the boil on the butt of selfless self, the irritation. And now, hopefully, a little occasional irritation and erase. Oh, get this off. Just like I think Nisargadatta Maharaj says that everything's occurring on this sickness. And if you were sick and everything you did was in this sickness state, and this sickness is this I am somebody else that has appeared on spontaneous presence, and this presence is trying to shake that off. Although, again, in reality, presence itself is not needing anything. That's like we said before about your own spontaneous presence. It clicks with the body and you say, I. You identify this I as the body, and then you said, no, this is a body. You go and the presence, okay, you're formless. Okay, now I know myself in a real sense. The selfless self, don't need to know yourself, but when you do know yourself, you should know yourself in a real sense and not through the illusory body form. Because when you believe you're in an illusory body form, then the mind, ego, intellect that came along with the body, you're going to believe what the interpretation of this world is, that it's absolutely true, that everything is so scary. It's me against all 8 billion people, and we're all running and grabbing for the same stuff. The happiness is the lack of disturbance because there's not a you that's disturbing. You don't want anything from outside because there's not a you that needs anything. There's no wants, no needs, no nothing. You're just with yourself as self. Again, that razor's edge of reality. There's no you there. There's no knowing or unknowing. There's no nothing. You're just, scenes are coming and going, but there's no you in it. There's no local identification where you can say, here's John, here's this bottle, here's John, here's this computer. Of course, you know, you wouldn't tell people, oh yeah, there's no me here, but you'll know there's no you. Like, and then there's no others, and it's just communication. If there's no me, then there's no you. Because in order for there to be a you, there has to be John that is, I am somebody else, and this is John, and this is John's character, and how he believes, and all this. And now John introduces him outside as something outside as Andrew. But if you know yourself as the space, then the space introduces itself to what? And which object inside the space is the space believing is itself? You wear the clothes very lightly. The body, you're walking, and all activities, scenes are coming and going, but there's not this pressure. The body knowledge is pressuring to believe, I am a body, I believe these things, this is my life, and all this kind of stuff. Body knowledge is erased, and there's no illusory layers on your spontaneous presence. It's just presence, just I. And moving about like formlessly, without creating the concept of formless, because that's another thing, like we were talking, oh, wow, I'm formless. I feel formless, but I feel formless is not good.
That's another identity.
Exactly. Now John is formless, you know, rather than the formlessness, just I, but there's no need to label. There's no need to there's nothing. And in the exercise we talked about, closing the eyes and seeing, okay, I can still see. So these physical eyes are not needed to see, because even though there's like a darkness, there's seeing of that. And if I keep quiet long enough, then I start to see images and different thoughts and such appearing, and that's mine. So, okay, I'm also prior to that because I'm witnessing that on this screen. And then if I keep very, very quiet, I notice that there's a gap in between thoughts or images or anything like that. And yet I still am here when there's nothing on the screen of mind. So, okay, even in that nothingness, which I can perceive as a void because there's no activity and there's no nothing, but yet there's something because I'm still here seeing this nothing, this void, and I remain concentrating on the concentrator. I just remain with myself as self. And I open my eyes, and I'm remaining with myself as self, prior to mind, ego, intellect, body, and world.
Mentioned in interaction with others, well, I've always noticed my whole life, when I get an interaction with any kind of social situation, that it becomes, my mind automatically goes into comparisons. Like comparisons will pop up. Like this person is such and such a way, and then I am such and such a way. It's really hard for me to maintain.
Well, just know you. If there's no you, then there can't be an other, and there can't be any kind of comparison because there's nothing to compare.
Yeah, I gotta keep that.
There's no you there. There's no body knowledge, no impressions. And in those situations, mantra. And see, when I'm in the office and somebody walks in, I acknowledge they're there. Hello, what do we need? Okay, talk. Finish, and it's gone. So there is like kind of a falling down, so to speak. I wouldn't really say falling down, but the use of the body. Okay, do what needs to be done, and shoop, but you're still. You see, this activity and such is arising on your spontaneous presence. The background of everything is this stillness. And yet you do what needs to be done and back. And you don't need to think about, okay, that guy walked by, oh, I hope he doesn't come back again, or da, 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 da. No, it's like, it's there and it's finished and you're back to work.
I got to get used to the fact that I can do that and I can come back to.
Absolutely. And practice that. Because even though that's like, okay, that's duality, and people will say, well, you know, you're talking about duality now, but that's okay, because if there's a you that has this thought about that, then use that you to practice. Notice and practice. Don't beat yourself up and say, oh, I'm never going to get this spirituality thing or whatever, or I thought I was doing so well and now I've fallen back down. No, notice and go right back to mantra. When that I am somebody else starts to turn, use that moment to mantra, or to remain with yourself with self. Remain with the sense of presence. Even while you're talking with someone, you can use it as an exercise of, without letting anybody know, just remain with your sense of presence and still carry on the conversation. Especially if the person is talking something that's irritating you, that's the best time to go to the sense of presence and observe what your mind, okay, now mind is happening because this person is starting to go blah, 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 and really irritating, but observe what your mind is saying about the situation. And right away, you're outside of the whole thing and you remain with yourself with self.
It's really hard for me to find some space in there for that.
At first, but practice. See, again, the more you do this, the more you, the selfless self, are kind of rewarding yourself with the peace and the silence and all this, because you're impressing the reality and you're no longer impressing the false kind of illusory concepts in the body-based knowledge. It's like if you, I think they talk about like feeding the wolves. You feed one wolf who's angry and nasty and hateful, or you feed one wolf who's happy and all this kind of stuff. Which wolf wins? The one you feed. So if you're constantly impressing illusory concepts, more illusory concepts, more illusory concepts, and then when you realize, oh my God, I'm impressing illusory concepts, that's more illusory concepts. Or you're actually saying to yourself, ooh, okay, this is a good, okay, remain with myself with self. Remain with myself with self, observe my mind. Look, there's a thought coming about this. I don't need to put that into practice right now. I can just keep quiet and remain with myself with self. That's it. And nobody needs to know this. It's not like you're sitting there and you're being like, okay, I'm smiling now because I'm remaining with myself with self. And even though you're irritating me, I'm very, very happy with myself with self. No, it's not like that. It's just very casual, just very, but impressing the reality. Because see, all these incidents of upset and all these incidents of things that, quote, go wrong are opportunities. They're doorways that are opening to your own selfless self. But you see them as, ooh, I better really dig deep. No, these are the opportunities to let go, to remain with your selfless self and to observe this passing thing as what it will do. It will pass, and that's it. And whatever needs to be done seemingly will be done in the moment through spontaneous action without a thinker being created and without an experiencer experiencing anything because it was spontaneous action.
Oh, it's 8:30.
Oh, okay. Spontaneously, we're leaving. Everybody enjoy your evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.